UN admits refugees have faced racism at the Ukrainian border. So this is from The Independent. I'll read some of it. The United Nations has admitted that some non-European refugees have faced discrimination while trying to flee to safety at Ukraine borders after their experiences were dismissed as lies and, quote, Russian disinformation by online commentators. Filippo Grandi, the organization's High Commissioner for Refugees, acknowledged their plight during a press conference on Tuesday afternoon. Quote, "You have seen reports in the media that there are different treatments with Ukrainians and non-Ukrainians. Now our observations, and we possibly cannot observe every single post yet, but our observations is that these are not state policies, but there are instances which it has happened." Okay, it's not state policies, but it just so happens to be happening at the border of Ukraine. Okay. There has been a different treatment. There should be absolutely no discrimination between Ukrainians and non-Ukrainians, Europeans and non-Europeans. Everyone is fleeing from the same risks. The UN plans to intervene to try to ensure that everybody receives equal treatment. So that's the UN. They say a lot of things, and usually there's not much follow-up. Now I want to get to this BuzzFeed article that actually has more examples. African students said they're facing racism on trains and buses while trying to flee Ukraine. Foreign students trying to reach the Ukrainian border said they were thrown off trains, not allowed on buses, and made to wait hours in the cold before crossing over. I'll read some of this. Many African students who studied in Ukraine said they're facing racial discrimination during their terrifying journeys fleeing Russia's attacks, often struggling to find a way out of the country. BuzzFeed News heard from 2 Nigerian students who said they were subjected to racial slurs on a train and were violently thrown off it by Ukraine police officers who pulled a gun on them. A student from Sierra Leone said that she and her companions were not allowed to board a train headed to the border despite having tickets. And a student from Liberia said she was forced to spend 2 days in the cold without food and shelter at the Ukrainian border after guards refused to let her and other people of color board buses taking refugees across to Poland.
This reminds me first to introduce myself to people and what I'm going to be basing my actual opinion off of. There was an instance where people were seeking refuge in China and Black people weren't being allowed to do that there. They were facing massive points of discrimination in China all across. When we talk about the Uyghur Muslims, when we talk about the South African apartheid, when we talk about every section of history seems to do this thing where they want to disallow the advent of the idea of racism still existing even in war-torn states. For me personally, when I read these things, I was surprised, but I wasn't too surprised because I know that this is a rampant thought that isn't explored too much in European nations because you gotta remember the history of Europe. I'm sorry, I'm not going to sit here and backtrack us through it. But when it comes to hearing these stories, I'm more allowed to take it at face value because that's what happens. Whenever it's a refugee situation, and I know a lot of people have made these comparisons already, and they're way smarter than me, so I'm just going off of them. We have this situation where every time we go and look for refugees or every time we try to say we should help them, there gets this comparison as to who should get help. Like there are people coming into this border right now currently from the Ukraine, and they're people of different ethnicities, different colors, and people are pocket watching them. Like, oh, these refugees, these immigrants are coming in and you got the nicest sneakers on. You don't look like you're poor. You don't look like you should be running from anything. You look like you make a lot of money. There's always this layer of racism that's laid on top of any war-torn or struggling nation. And right now we're witnessing this identity crisis for Ukrainians and more importantly Europeans, because now they're facing, and I hate to say it this way because it makes me sound like a jerk, but it's true. And as you just covered in your last with your last guest, now we've got these people saying, I can't believe this is happening to people with blonde hair and blue eyes. And it's like, I hate that it's gonna take the loss of people go ahead.
Let me play that one more time if people didn't see. So
please, because
what he's referring to is a Ukrainian, I think it was like a top legal official for Ukraine, very upset about Aryan people.
Me, I'm sorry, it's very emotional for me because I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed, children being killed every day with Putin's missiles and his helicopters and his rockets.
And so, of course, I understand and respect the emotion. What you were outlining there is this tension between...
Well, first of all, maybe he should know that his president is a Jew, So when you're basically low key, I'm very concerned about Aryans being attacked. By the way, we should blue eyes, blonde hair, brown hair, black eye. I mean, everybody should be concerned, but it's just interesting that he said that when his president's Jewish.
And
Anyway.
it's great. So my catchphrase for anybody who doesn't know me, or the funny thing that I try to say is, if all lives matter, then X, Y, or Z. And this is another situation where I'm going to say it. If all lives matter, then why are you being now reveled at this? And it's the quiet part is out loud. And I feel like we're entering a stage where we're now seeing that even in places where we kind of not just don't think about often, but in places where we understand what's going on, but we kind of just put it to the wayside, even there in places where they don't have to worry about systemic issues like we do in this country. And I mean, Black people in this country, even in those places where you think those issues would be either non-existent or a back burner focus issue that could be solved with, a little bit of remedy. It's the prevailing theory. It's the prevailing method. It's the prevailing way in which the society thinks. The fact that we're even worrying about the color of people's skin while people are getting bombed shows you, well, why aren't we why aren't we showing this amount of care or concern towards, I still don't even know. And this is honestly like a sad part of my intellectual, I guess, pathway, but I still don't know what happened to the Uyghur Muslims. Have they been released from those camps? We're talking, there's so many issues. I'm sorry, there's just so many issues that this leads to that it makes me think, yeah, of course you wouldn't want Black people to get out of the country. You want fodder. You want to get your citizens out safely. You like to view people as a hierarchy. And when war happens, that should, and I hate the idea of, I'm anti-war, of course. But I hate this idea that even when you're witnessing fighter jets literally dropping bombs, you're getting drone striked and everything, skin color still matters. Shouldn't it be to just evacuate everyone, but then we're gonna have a problem of where are they going? Is it racist where they're going? Will they be allowed? It's like we don't have a humanitarian response to anything anymore. We judge people based on their immutable characteristics. We as people claim that we would never do that, but large governments do that, and large governments push that propaganda down to their people. And some of us in America, very America-centric people, will say, that doesn't matter. They know better than that. We're in 2022. That should change by now. But look at the reports of what you're seeing. It's something where I can't explain to you why it's happening. I have to explain to you that it's just bad that it's happening. And I hate the other side of that, which you just mentioned, and that's the last point I'll address, is that it's not a state-sanctioned thing. It's just the people doing that. In a time where every human body is a resource, every person, every hand on deck that you could get, cooks, doctors, medicine people, you don't know who these people are. Nope. You're not worth it. Get off the train. Ukrainians first. But I'm Ukrainian. Oh, my skin color don't match your perception of what Ukrainians are. But if all lives matter,
right,
then that would be my take.
I also want to read this, Colin, if you could pull up the CNN article. International coalition files United Nations appeal over reports of racism at the border of Ukraine. An international coalition of activists and human rights attorneys on Wednesday announced they filed an appeal to the United Nations on behalf of African refugees facing racial discrimination in Ukraine and Poland. The filing follows numerous reports from Black refugees who said they faced segregation, racism, and abuse as they tried to flee for safety from war-torn Ukraine to Poland. Coalition members said during a news conference on Wednesday that they've heard reports of segregated lines for white and Black people at the Polish border, and Black mothers and children have been thrown off trains. Videos shared on social media have shown groups of Black people stranded at the border, not being allowed in, and various threats against Black people. So let's put aside the just evil of this for a second, which is hard to do. There's a lot, the word war crimes is being used against Russia, I believe rightly so. Well, if you're not letting people through a border that are trying to flee to safety because they're Black or brown or not Aryan, well, if they're not allowed through and harm is done to them because you are depriving them of safe entry, is that not a war crime against those people?
That's not the way they think about it, and that's the funniest part, is that the logistics of it are America, and I keep going back to America because I'm American and I'm not going to pretend like I am able to directly empathize with the plight of a foreign country, because I did never live there. I don't speak the language. I don't know the culture. And I'm not going to imbue the tones of how they should handle it. But on a logistical standpoint, that means you had that planned already. You had that planned already, and you're working towards, just like in the tornado that hit that Amazon factory and they wouldn't let them leave. You view these people as less than, which means that you've always viewed these people as less than, because now your country's under attack, and the first thing you're saying is, we're not letting the black people go through. And most people would say, well, maybe there's an entire reason behind it. Maybe there's some issue with the trains, and maybe they're trying to get the maximum amount of people out at the same time. It shouldn't matter at this point. It shouldn't matter at this point. And now you're having these people who are saying, well, this isn't happening. There's no, and you can see it with your own eyes. The question that we have to ask is, we cannot validate the invasion of Ukraine by Russia in any way, shape, or form. This was straight up a move. This is like a chess piece was moved and everybody thought it wasn't going to happen. Then it happened. Now we have to ask ourselves, at these two warring states, these two warring nations, what happens to the innocent people who get caught in the crossfire? Can we logistically figure out a way to solve or minimize the amount of human casualties? And then the racism plays a part in it. And
Right.
then the prejudice plays a part in it. And again, as was just mentioned, it's not a state-sponsored thing. So is Ukraine, that's a great question. Is Ukraine at fault for letting their citizens literally decide who stays and who goes, and therefore who probably lives and who dies? And this further fuels the confusion that I see people having about even being, and please don't ever be this, pro-Russian or pro-Ukrainian. Like, I get that, oh, they're doing bad stuff too. But that's part of the issue, is that even when there is a clear aggressor, you're still being a bad person. My empathy towards the situation drops, because it's like, wow, even when the whole nation is doing skits and memorials and sing-alongs and fundraising and this and that, my people are still at the bottom of the list. No matter where you move in this country, no matter where you go, no matter where you go on this globe, somehow, some way, it's the black person's fault. And I'm like, I thought Putin was the bad guy. I thought he said he was denazifying Ukraine, but like Ukraine pulling the Nazi stuff on the black people. It's too many layers. And I'm so angry about it. But at the same time, it's like, yeah.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.